do things. And I don't look bad at any of it. I just look at it more like, well, I made some mistakes. You know, I was younger, I was doing this, I was doing that. And, you know, now I'm just going to go about my life the way, you know, explain some of it within the book. Hopefully people can understand, you know, my little part of the equation, I guess.
Sure. And I think one of the reasons why I do talk about mental health and addiction, and I use you as an example and Duff, and an example meaning somebody who could have lost their life. But look at the complete 180 of where they are now and the role model that they have become. And I'm sure I don't want to speak for you, but I know for me, when you're in it, when you're really the height of addiction, you don't think there's anything for you on the other side. That's it. It's not going to get better. But you are proof that it gets better. So Duff, these are people that all could have easily lost their lives, but look at what they are now. They're, like I said, I don't think I'm overselling it by saying you guys are role models in the year 2020. You know, I'm sure you wouldn't say you were a role model when you were touring the world with Guns N' Roses, but I think you're a role model now.
No, you know what? It was the right time and the right thing to be a pirate, you know?
I like that.
I mean, at that particular time of our lives, when you're young and you're out there and you're rebellious and, you know, you're doing what you think is right at the time. And, you know, I meet younger kids and younger bands and they're partying and they're doing their thing. And I got nothing to say about any of that except for, you know, you're going to get there when you're going to get there. You're going to do what you're going to do until you don't do it anymore. And then, you know, there's an old expression, you can't drag a guy up a bar stool. You know, it's like, until you figure out where you want to go, you know. And I got to say, a large percentage of those years were great. Okay? I would say, and I don't go back, oh man, it was horrible. I was in such bad shape. And yes, there was times. But for myself, I could just only tell my story. And my story, you know, like I said, is in the book. And there were times where I'm like, okay, well, this is out of control. And, you know, and like you just said, we're all still alive. That kind of blew my mind, you know, when I think about it. I'm like, you know, back in the day, as hard as we went at it, I thought someone was going to die, for sure. And I used to worry probably more about the other guys than me. But especially Duff, I thought any day, because there was times when I would see him and I'd go, oh my God, you know.
Wow.
But
you just look at him now.
So we've all lived to tell the tale, if you will, and that's,
yeah,
you know, with the exception of people like that we love, like Scott, you know, Scott, and you know, and then the people that we lost, you know, Chester and Chris Cornell,
right.
You know, and you know, the guys that we lost along the way, you know, a lot of musicians, you know, a lot, so, and friends.
I know. It's tough, and that's why stories like yours are inspirational. So I know the book.
I'm very, and I said this. I'm very upset about Chester, and I'm very upset about Chris, because those are the guys that we're going to replace and Scott, and those are the guys that we're going to fill the bill. The guys that came before them. Those are the three greats that were like guys that were going to replace the icons before them. Because I always say, who's going to replace Mick and Steven Tyler and, you know, all these great rock and roll frontmen? Who are the next generation, right? Who are the guys that are going to take their place? You know, for the next generation to go, oh my God, is Chris Cornell, one of the greatest rock singers of all time, in my opinion. Even Axl used to take me out. I remember when Soundgarden opened for us in Europe. And Axl goes, you got to come out. I mean, Axl was the one that brought Soundgarden on tour. He's the one that turned me on to Nine Inch Nails. He said, listen to this record. And he picked a lot of those opening bands, Blind Melon, Shannon Oon. That was Axl's buddy. Another guy you lost.
Yeah.
Shannon. And Shannon was out of his mind. That guy was so crazy. I feel like, dude, take it down a notch. Like, but he was so lovable. But it's just another case of couldn't handle the fame. He just could not handle it. And anyway, long story short, me and Axel, I remember going out. We were in Prague, Czechoslovakia. We're playing this huge stadium, and we went out. Soundgarden, he goes, check this guy out. I'm like, oh my god! And I remember standing on the side of the stage with Axel. I mean, Axel Lewis, I'm like, and he loved music, man. He was very inspired by these guys, and he wanted the challenge to go up after Chris Cornell and bands like that, and show them to the world. I remember the Smashing Pumpkins opening for them in Chicago before they had a record deal.
Wow!
And Axel found out about them. He goes, "Hey, did you hear about this band in Chicago? He just got signed called Smashing Pumpkins." That was like '91, and I remember they were doing 2 nights with us in Chicago. They were opening, and that was when we had the St. Louis Riot, and they were all set up doing their sound check. And I think we had a production guy named Opie who still works at the band. I think he went up and said, "You guys can pack it up and go home. The band's not coming." Because we were like basically in St. Louis. We had the huge Riot, and we took off and went to Chicago. It's in the book, my book.
Right.
I remember a lot of stuff, like some of the other guys don't tell a lot of those particular stories. But I remember we took a van, we drove up to Chicago, and Axel was extradited. He was getting extradited to Missouri, and he took off and flew back to LA to meet with some attorneys and stuff. So the gigs were canceled. We'd canceled, plus all of our gear was ruined in the riot. So we couldn't have played if we wanted to.
Okay, I did not know that.
Oh my God! If you look back at the footage, even on YouTube, the crowd took the stage and ruined all the equipment, stole a lot of the gear. A lot of people were injured in that particular.
Another tale of survival for Matt Sorum.
Yeah, we ended up leaving in the van, and it's in the book, and I don't want to tell the whole story.
No.
I don't want to spoil it.
Right.
We all rode this van up to Chicago from St. Louis, and Diddy took a bus. He split right away, and then it was probably one of the coolest van rides I've ever been in, because we were all together in a van for hours. Here we were at that time, being probably the biggest band in the world, like riding in this van and trying to get away from the cops, wearing full stage regalia, still in our stage clothes. You know what I mean?
Oh wow!
Axel was wearing that night. He was wearing that feather boa, and he had like a skirt on. We stopped at a Waffle House because we were all hungry. We all walked in there, full of stage gear. Everyone just looked over. Remember, we looked up on the TV and we were on the news. Like the riot, right? Yeah, it was a great time. And the people in St. Louis, it was weird to them and a hard situation, but wild times. But,
do you foresee, we got to get your book out first, but after that, do you foresee this becoming like a movie? Obviously I spoke to Cherie about the Runaways movie and, Queen and Elton John. Is there going to be a GNR movie, do you think, eventually?
I don't know.
All right.
I don't know. I don't have a lot of responsibility for the catalog, so.
Oh, fair enough. But then let me ask you then what you are, because I know we only have you for a couple more minutes. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, if it's just in the book, you don't have to give us a story if you don't want, but do you talk about like GNR recording in the mid-90s, about that breakup when Slash and Duff finally left? Do we get to read about that from your perspective?
I probably won't comment on that yet.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't want that to be the headline.